There is a consistent theme of duality in The Medium by Bloober Team. The central gameplay mechanic is the idea of a person split between two worlds, the real and the spirit. But there's so much more than that. There's this merger between psychological horror and interactive drama. There's modern graphical and technical prowess mixed with 1996 Resident Evil-esque gameplay. There's a story that's seemingly incomprehensible, yet unravels itself into a complex stream of supernatural phenomena. The Medium is a wonderful delight, a game that challenges you to search every corner, pay close attention, and discover the secrets within that drive you. The Medium follows Marianne, a young woman with the uncanny ability to travel through the spirit realm, allowing her to assist those who require help crossing over into whatever lies in wait after death. After an accident, Marianne is left an orphan, and because of her abilities is an outcast, moving from foster home to foster home in search for someone to love her. All of this is backstory, however, as the adventure picks up after a mysterious caller beckons her to come to an abandoned resort, claiming she is the only one who can help, whatever that means. The game is set mostly in the Polish wilderness back in the late 90s. In the real-world side of things, the landscape is certainly a graphical showcase. Areas with rain and other reflective lighting effects to show off, RTX or no, absolutely shine here, pun not intended. However, it's important to note that this game is an absolute beast to run. My PC with an i7-9750H and an RTX 2070 could barely run the game at 30 FPS in 1080p with ray tracing turned off. Over on Xbox's side of things, both Series X and S run at a dynamic resolution. While the Series X can run at up to 4K, split-screen sequences can dip all the way down to 900p. Over on the S, the highest pixel count comes up to 1080p, with the lowest down to a mere 648p. However, this is simply to keep performance up, which I'll take any day. The Series X version also includes ray tracing, whereas the S does not. As far as the aforementioned performance, the game maintains a smooth 30 FPS, with the exception of occasional dips when transitioning to a cutscene. There are some issues with frame time, however, but the developers are currently working on a patch. The story of The Medium is definitely the more contested part of the critical review. While I can understand people's criticisms, there's a fine line between complexity and convolution. You have to pay attention to fully grasp what Bloober Team is feeding you here, and that might not be for everyone. But the more you dive into the mystery behind Niva, the more you'll take away from what it has to offer. Overall, the pacing is excellent, with the minor exception of the second act perhaps taking a bit too long to get where it wants to go. As far as characters go, Bloober Team certainly injects plenty of intrigue. The more I thought I knew about Marianne, the more the game continued to prove me wrong. Kelly Burke gives a great performance as the protagonist, and while the other big player may be getting most of the buzz, her role is not to be underappreciated. What I mean by the other player is, of course, Troy Baker. In The Medium, he voices the Maw, the primary antagonist, a malicious creature hunting down Marianne as she searches for answers. Those who know me know that I am absolutely obsessed with Troy Baker, but I would not even claim bias when I say that this performance is one of his absolutely most awe-inspiring. The audio design throughout is superb, and Baker's delivery is absolutely chilling to the bone when coupled with the game's eerie soundtrack. Those that are not aware of his role in the game would have a hard time even recognizing him here, and I consider that to be high praise. Speaking of the soundtrack, there's a really interesting system in which it was developed. Arkadiusz Rykowski composed the music for The Real World, a veteran Bloober Team associate whose work feels like a mix of past titles like Layers of Fear with something like Deadly Premonition, in the best ways. The Spirit Realm, however, had its score composed by horror legend Akira Yamaoka, also known as the composer behind the Silent Hill franchise. Each and every track in the spooky world of the dead is disturbingly haunting, and it does its task, inspiring an uncanny sense of fear and uneasiness throughout. While I would not go so far as to say this is a very scary game, the score does most of the work delivering a large amount of dread in some pivotal moments that really put the fear of God in me during my playthrough. But let's talk about the gameplay. The big draw here is the shared world, playing in two instances at the same time. Oftentimes one side of the world has some sort of obstacle that keeps you from progressing in the other, making fun environmental puzzles reminiscent of the Resident Evil franchise. Most of the time these puzzles also resulted in more learning of the story behind Niva and its history, which make each search for clues thoroughly enjoyable. And that is the key to the Medium's fun. It's a slow burn. The game is meant to be poured over and put under a lens, literally. When in the real world, Marianne can use her insight to find useful tools such as hidden photographs or items in drawers, But besides that, the story really is the main focus here, and the more you recognize that as the player, the more enjoyment you'll get from the experience as a whole. While all of Bloober Team's games before this have been in the first person, the medium breaks this trend and is exclusively in third person, save for a story cutscene. It may seem odd at first, but given the game's status as a next-gen launch window game, nothing could be more fitting for what it's trying to accomplish. On a technical level, the medium accomplishes things completely impossible on older hardware, yet is clearly reminiscent of classic horror franchises like Silent Hill. To have this fixed camera view like many 90s games mixed with detective views from previous titles by the studio, it's an homage to definitive horror titles while providing a unique story of its own. Perhaps my biggest fault with the medium is its ambition. Beyond the technical dream, the lore behind these mediums and all of the supernatural phenomena surrounding them, there's an entire franchise worth of content that could be explored here. I'm not necessarily sure if Bloober Team planned for there to be a sequel. There's plenty of evidence for both arguments, but I surely hope they do. The way in which the developers crafted this world is begging for more experience, and while I think they could have included more of it here, I would gladly take more in a full-fledged second installment. The medium is a magnificent and intriguing tale. While it may just be too ambitious for its own good, the foundation here is one of the most original pieces of horror media I've seen in a long time. The story is enthralling, the gameplay is nostalgic yet technically savvy, and the audio work is top-notch. For horror fans out there, I simply cannot recommend this enough. For more, be sure to check out my other videos, like if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys next time for whatever it is I'm doing. Alright, see ya.